All right, welcome everyone. Welcome back. Today we have a bit of an instructional video to share with you. I've had some requests in the past little while about how do I do it? What do I do up here? Why do I pick registrations that I do or the intros that I decide to do? So just a quick little tutorial video about how I do it, not necessarily how everybody else should do it. So let's be very clear. Actually, let's be extremely clear. This is how I do it. This is not how I expect everybody should do it, or if it's the proper way. For all the trolls out there who might say, well, that's not how to do it, this is how I do it. So with that aside, let's get back to so the importance of hymns, especially in the Catholic Church, are very important. It's a sacramental church where there is a lot of singing of hymns and service music. It's a little harder to get people to engage in the Catholic Church, just from past traditions where the choirs used to sing it all. So what we have to do is we really have to engage with the congregation in trying to get them to sing. So some devices that I will show you today. There's a lot of different things we can do, and just because this happens to be a bigger organ, we'll also do it so if you have a smaller 2-manual organ in a smaller church, because you can do the same thing even on a smaller organ. So let's begin. Introduction of a hymn. So what we'll use, I'm going to use the hymn tune Love Divine, All Loves Excelling, hymn tune of Blainwern for this. If I'm going to introduce this hymn, it's usually like a processional hymn or something like that. So it has to be engaging with the congregation so that we can get them to even open a book and even give an attempt to sing. So you have to make it a little bit thrilling. Here's the worst thing that you could do to introduce this hymn. So far, beautiful hymn tune, just not very thrilling. So there's two different things you can do. A lot of times what I will do is I will begin with a full swell with the box closed and a grate and a choir that are fundamental, the principal chorus kind of thing. And then with the full swell, I can bring in the swell to actually make it sound a lot more full and a little more engaging. So here's what I might do. Just a little, nothing too spectacular, but just bringing in some reeds. The other option that I sometimes use is I will use the tromba party horn to kind of do a little bit of a melody leading type thing. And this can be very effective if you have a good reed. Something like this. And then we get started. Not too bad, but it gives the tune, it portrays power, and it actually might encourage some people to open a hymn book. So now for those of you that have a smaller organ, 2-manual, we're going to turn this organ into a 2-manual organ right now, just a swell and a grate. So we're going to look over here, and what you can do, you can also do the same kind of thing. Most 2-manual organs will have a swell pedal that will allow you to open up the swell a little bit more. So if you have a decent swell, so let's put on some swell stops over here, put like full swell, what we can do. Some might not have, well, probably definitely not Vox Humana, but maybe an oboe and a cornopian, so that's fine. We use that. We're not going to touch any swell. We're going to make this a 2-manual organ. So then what we'll do is we'll couple that to the grate, just in unison pitch, because some of these smaller organs, they might not have a super coupler. And then what we'll do is we'll do the principal chorus from the grate. We can super that. Well, let's say no, because it might not have a super. So let's just play it like that. We'll just a basic, yeah, like that. We'll put some pedal on. No reeds in the pedal, just some basic pedal. All right, so here's what we might want to do with this. We'll put the grate to the pedal just to give it a little more. Here's if you have a 2-manual organ. We're going to open up the swell to bring on some of those reeds over here that we've put on. Okay, that's one way to do it. We definitely heard the reeds come on there. We can also solo that out. So you might not have a big party horn on your two-manual organ, and that's fine. What we can do is we can take it up an octave. So let's just say that we're going to take we'll keep the reeds on the swell, and we'll keep the box closed a little bit, the swell box. And what we'll do is we're going to octave out the melody an octave higher, just to give that leading impression. Sounds something like this. All we're doing, we're keeping the same registration, but I'm just going to play the melody an octave higher. Okay. You can even, if you want, you probably would likely have a mixture on your two-manual great organ there. So what I would do, you could also put that on if it's not too much. This one is a little bit big, but let's just see what it sounds like. Tierce tune mixture, so not the greatest for that example, but your organ might be different, so give it a try, whatever works for your organ. So that's what you would do with a two-manual organ. Now, what do we do when we get moving along? So we would pick a definite, just a basic hymn setting. I like to start off verse 1 just with the organ plenum, principal chorus type thing, nothing too big. So we start, and it would sound something like this. Verse 1. Second verse, I like to take it down a little bit because we've led them into it now. They should have a decent idea about how the hymn goes. So we take it down, I put on some soft reeds, a little bit of a fuller swell, a little bit of a fuller choir on this organ, and I take it down. I won't play the whole hymn, but I'll just play the second half. First verse registration and comparison. Second verse registration. Now, this hymn happens to have 3 verses in it that we use. So say if it had a 4th verse, by now if we get to the 3rd verse, what I would do is I would bring it down even further to very basic principal chorus, soft type string, soft 4/4 kind of thing. Let the congregation sing. Now this is verse 3. They should have a decent idea of what it's like. You bring the organ down, they can hear themselves singing. It gets a little bit exciting for them. So something like this, just the second part of the hymn. In comparison to the second verse registration. Third verse registration. Now we get to the last verse, or whatever your final verse happens to be. In this particular hymn, it's the 3rd verse. So now we go on to, we have to let them know that we're wrapping it up. We finish on a big note. They've had 2 verses to get familiar with it, so we're going to beef it up a little bit. I've done an experiment here a number of times in this church. I found that the softer I might play, the softer the congregation sings. A little bit louder that I play, the congregation definitely engages a lot more. So For the for the final verse rather, I go with a full swell, even with the 16-foot reed, full pedal without the reed, almost a full choir, with even the soft reeds in there. We couple it down all to the great, just with a super on the swell, and we get something like this for the final stanza. Now, if you're so inclined, if you are able to find this book, 200 Last Verses by Noel Rothstorn, wonderful book, wonderful tool to have around all the time. This will give you alternate harmonies for the final stanzas of your hymns. For a lot of them anyways. There are quite a few hymns that are listed in here that he has for. So if you can pick this up, this is a gem to have around. So what you can do, this happens to be in the same key that I started with it, the key of G. So you take it for your final verse, you could use this alternate melody, kind of makes it a little bit more thrilling. Sounds something a little bit like this. I'll play the first part. Absolutely wonderful alternate harmony for the last verse, and I would only recommend that you alter the harmony on the last verse only. So if you have a choir that's singing SATB for verse 1 and 2 or something like that, have them sing unison for the final stanza so you can play the alternate harmony, because it won't match up to what they're used to singing in the rest of the harmony of the hymn that's written that they have. So to take it a step further, if you are that inclined to be able to change keys easily, you could download or find a version of this hymn in the key of F, and then for the final stanza bring it up to G. Makes it that much more thrilling. You can do that in a number of ways. You can just the basic so on and so forth. That's the very simple way to do it. You could get a lot more elaborate with it. Here where we have high mass with incense and the priest is incensing the altar and everything like that, sometimes we have to fill in a bit of time. So a little longer key change might work. So when we come to the end of the key in F, there's lots of different ways you can do that, and that has to be worked on through the week when you're practicing. Come up with a nice key change, but if it's hard, just take it from that F, take it to the D7 chord, and then that will bring you naturally into the key of G. An easy way to change keys without having to worry too much about what to do. Make sure you have both scores side by side on the rack, that you're able to go from the key of F to the key of G, and there you'll be just fine. You should be just fine. You practice it a lot through the week to make sure it happens properly on the weekend. If you're playing a hymn for the choir only, it is very, very important that you maintain the exact harmony that's written on the page and not alter even the pedal line to bring it down, say, an octave. Play it exactly where it's written, because for the pedal, the basses will be relying on hearing that pitch. And if you're playing it an octave lower, it's not only does it sound a little bit wonky, but it might throw them off a little bit. So when it's just the choir, I would recommend definitely playing the exact written harmony that's in the stanza. If we were to take Abide With Me, Eventide, and just to give an example of that, if it's just for the choir, number one, you have a softer registration, but maintain that strict harmony that's written on the page that the choir also has for them to read. Very important to maintain that pedal in the right octave for that. Also, make sure that you're phrasing so that they can get a breath. Whether you're singing for or playing for the congregation or playing for the choir, you have to phrase a hymn. So a basic hymn, even like we'll stick with the Abide With Me since we're already on here, make sure you phrase it in a point that they can breathe. Do it something like this. Lift. Another lift. Lift. Very important to phrase it so they can breathe. If people in the congregation can't breathe, they feel defeated and they'll just close the book and put it back. Phrase it, give some lifts in there. The worst thing to do is just to play it right through. It doesn't sound very good, and it actually doesn't feel very natural, so I'm not sure that a lot of people would be playing it like that, as those are natural on those whole notes to take a breath and to move on from there. So give it a little bit of a lift. So sometimes when I'm playing a bigger hymn like that, I will take the break, but I'll also leave a note hanging on just to give a little bit of continuity. I'll lift everything else, but I'll either leave an alto note down or a tenor note, maybe even the leading note. So for example, something like Praise to the Lord the Almighty. A little bit something like this is what I might do for the final stanza. So at the end of the fourth line where we went, I left the melody note on just as a continuity thing rather than break. We've got a whole church going down there, and to make a big break in there, a little odd sometimes. So if you have 1,000 people downstairs singing, it's a lot easier or a lot better sometimes just to leave a note. Sometimes it might feel natural, so just do it if it feels natural. To leave a note hanging on in there, it doesn't have to be all around, or little devices like the little run up to the thing. Just little things like that will encourage them. It's like, here, something big is coming. Or you might be able to use the tromba. Just something to, enhance the hymn a little bit like that. But I do find that when I'm playing, say, a big verse or something like that at the final hymn, when it's a whole congregation. I will leave a note hanging in there just somewhere on the lift just to give a little bit of continuity. Now, another device which you might do to get the congregation, say they're dragging or something like that, what we'll do is we'll take the Crimond hymn, The Lord's My Shepherd now, and this is a good example of a hymn that has a tendency to perhaps slow down. So if we were to take it just the way it's written, we'll just play it nice and simple here. So that was played basically just the way it was written, nothing, no big lifts or anything like that. Now, a way to get it to go, so if it's starting to slow down and you can hear it and you're thinking, oh, it's starting to train wreck a little bit, what you can do is with the bass is you can repeat that bass line like a rhythm. That will also keep things moving along. You may even want to put on a little bit of a heavier bass and an 8-foot tone or something, just to give that illusion of a beat in there, every quarter note. Also, if you're playing for the congregation, and this is just my opinion, you can take that octave, that pedal note down the octave if you're trying to portray something or convey an idea through. If it was just a choir, like I say, keep it in the proper octave, but to get it across so it cuts through a little more, take it down from the higher F down to the lower F octave and repeat that F, and that gives you the beat. Okay? That's one way to keep things moving. Here's another example using the Duke Street hymn that you can do. You can chop this hymn a little bit to make a big statement on what the melody might be. We'll just take it on the organ plenum, the principal chorus setting, just to give the idea. If you have 1,000 people singing and it gets a little bit slow, that will not sound in the least bit weird at all, because you've got a big sound going on there, but you're also leading them and you're bringing in definite downbeats there and beats to keep the timing. Even on a bigger registration, it's even a little better. Interlude. So what I've done is I've kept the melody note down, but I've chopped everything else in the harmony, including the bass. And that just gives a definite where to go. You can make it even beefier than that. You can add your subs and supers, put a mixture on. Any kind of device at all to help keep that hymn moving, because once it starts to slow down, it just gets worse and worse and worse from there. So it's very important to know what you're having to work with each organ that you play. I would recommend that you sit down, take a good amount of time to just sit and go through all the stops and see what everything sounds like, put them together, make some hymn registrations. One of the worst things you can do is play the hymn on the same registration for all 3, 4, or 5 stanzas. Change it up each time. Make sure the introduction is very obvious about what you're about to present to the congregation to sing. and make sure that you hit them with something that's going to encourage them to open up that hymn book. But learn your organ. Sit down and take the time, even before you play a simple hymn. Spend an hour, even if you have to, and go through all the tones and see what it has to offer. See what they sound like all coupled together. And then you can go freely from there and start to make your own creative registrations, because every organ is very unique and every organ has something beautiful to offer. It might sound like, oh, I just play a simple two-manual organ, but no, they're all little gems and they have something that they can offer. And out of any bad situation, you have to try and pull some good. So even these little organs, you'd be just fine to find something that works. We've just discovered how we can make a little two-manual with a basic 1 or 2 reeds sound okay. Bonus for you if you have a bigger organ like that, but you don't need, chances are a smaller church has the smaller organ, so you don't need a lot of stops, because then it just becomes too much. Let me know in the comments down below if you might be interested in a short tutorial video about basic improvisation, especially in the Catholic Church. If you run out of hymn and then there's something still going on at the front, there's still an offertory or incensing at the beginning, and you need to start improvising on the hymn or anything like that, just to keep the flow going until the priest is at the chair ready to begin the Mass. I don't mind exploring anything like that at all, but please comment down below and let me know anything specific that you might want to see. And once again, I'm just going to reiterate, this is my take on what I do. I'm not saying it's the right way, but it's my way for what I do here. If I'm in a different place or at a different church, I have to be sensitive to what that congregation is like. And I just can't blow in there and sit down and play it like I'm used to here. So you have to be very sensitive to the room and the congregation and the space that you're in to be able to make music properly and to get people. The number one reason we're doing this is to make sure we can get them to engage in singing and to open that hymn book. And like I say, it's a little bit of a struggle in the Catholic Church sometimes, but if you provide good leading, you can make it happen. We all can't be fortunate sometimes to have rip-roaring congregations and things like that, and you may get in trouble for playing loud. I did get in trouble once for playing too soft, and that was at a United Church across the street. I was filling in and I was asked to beef things up, and that's rare, but still, don't be afraid to try things. Work with your priest maybe and see what he might be open to, and just go from there, but don't be afraid. But let me know. Comment down below what you might like to see or have me show you, or know how I do something, or what happens up here, or anything like that at all. I'm very happy to go through anything, as like I say, I get these questions all the time, and I don't mind making these short little tutorials about what happens up here, and we'll go from there. So don't forget to share, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you all again very soon. Thank you.